Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining today's webinar called So You Want to Open a Recovery House. My name is Ken Alligata. I'm a person in long-term recovery from alcohol and drugs since November 30th of 1988, which makes me an official old-timer at 27 plus years. I'm really grateful to be here today to act as your facilitator for this next hour or so. And thanks again for carving out the time of your busy day to make this webinar. It's important to you. It's important to us. This is a pretty hot topic nationwide, as you know, and there's never enough recovery beds around the United States for what we really need, especially on the East Coast and in the Midwest and in the West Coast. So I guess it's across the nation. And especially for women, there's not enough beds ever for women. We get hundreds and hundreds of calls every year, and we just don't have enough beds for women. So if you're considering that avenue, that's great because we certainly need that. We need it here in Connecticut, but we also need it across the nation. So thanks again for joining. I'm going to jump right into this because there's a lot to go over. And I don't want this to go over 90 minutes because we'd like to give you back your day, if you will. So thanks again. Click. So here's your recovery house description. You are a privately owned recovery home. Your recovery house residents come from many sources: treatment providers, Department of Corrections, doctors' offices, or others in recovery. For instance, at meetings, faith-based, 12-step, whatever, your residents may meet someone in a meeting that's looking for a place to stay. So they would be your advocates too for helping you fill your house, if you will. The recovery house revenue comes from the residents' payment of rent. The average house charges by the week, some do by the month, but in the nature of the business, it seems like a weekly rent is working the best for numerous reasons we don't have to get into. A recovery house is not a halfway house or a hospital-based recovery facility. We know that a halfway house is a real thing, Department of Corrections. But like Coca-Cola or Campbell's Soup, halfway house became a household word, and a lot of folks don't realize, and that's okay, that there are recovery houses. And we're also trying to change the lingo around sober houses opposed to a recovery house or recovery and wellness house. So think about that if you haven't coined your title yet of your home. Ken's Recovery House for Men, Ken's Recovery and Wellness Home for Women, whatever. Try to weave in the word recovery there. What we're finding out is the word, a lot of these sober houses, and this is just our humble opinion and what we're seeing across the, Connecticut, they're not so sober. And I think you know what I'm talking about. So let's get the word recovery in there. And after we go over this, we could talk a little bit in the end about affiliations, an agency by the name of NAR, National Alliance for Recovery Residences. And they're shooting for the same thing we're all shooting for, is safe, affordable housing that supports your residents' recovery core values. Usually there's no employees working for the recovery house. However, what we deal with here in Connecticut is mostly on the 4 levels of support. We are level 2. We deal mostly with level 2 homes, which is a live-in manager or supervisor. So that's what we deal with. So the recovery house ownership, it's a unique business opportunity, and you don't have to be in recovery to open a recovery house. I work with a lot of folks who are, they have property, they know of a person in their family circle who has passed on from an accidental overdose, and they have this innate behavior to give back, so they want to give back. They've got real estate. They said, Ken, we're not in recovery, but can we get involved? I said, absolutely, absolutely. You don't have to be in recovery to open a recovery house. If you have the heart and soul and you have the management who is in recovery, that's going to be leading your house, who has 3 to 5 years maybe of long-term recovery, that's really cool. You want that. So generous business people that truly want to help people in recovery, like we all do. Takes significant time and effort, and it's great personal satisfaction for the ones, it's that win-win, the feel good of helping and giving back. The recovery house ownership, again, the pre-admission criteria. When you're up and running, the first thing you're going to do is have a telephone interview prior to the face-to-face interview. You will have both. You want to screen your client, your potential client on phone. If the phone call lands on its feet, of course you're going to make a date to meet, you and or your manager. I would suggest in the beginning of opening the home that the owner and the manager meet the first few people and support them and let them know as the owner that you're here to support the person's recovery, and you could, in the interview process. Potential residents have a true desire to remain in recovery. I put that there because during your interview, the face-to-face interview, you want to ask some open-ended questions about their recovery, and you'll know within 30 seconds if this person is serious or not about their recovery. If they're rolling their eyes and looking for the front door, you may want to let them go and just say it didn't work out. And the pre-screen interview allows homeowner to discuss recovery core values and set the tone for future relationship between the candidate and the homeowner. You have a formal admissions process, which we'll go over a little bit more later. Here's my favorite, house rules to support recovery. It usually comes from the homeowner's personal values on maintaining recovery, and the owner and the manager definitely want to be on the same playing field, eye to eye, in agreement that this is the way we want to run our house. Because you'll get a lot of splitting from your residents, and you don't want that. It's kind of like when I was a child, I tried to pit my mom and dad against each other and say, well, dad said this, well, mom said this. No, mommy and I talked. You can't have any more ice cream. Go to bed. So anyway, your reputation is directly affected by the implementation of your house rules. You want to be known in your community as a very sound recovery house. And that will happen, trust me. Once you open that door and you get your first clients, word gets out quickly, word of mouth, great advertising. And you're also going to have minimum standards that we will talk about later. And your resident review and committing to rules, when you're going over that an agreement, your written contract agreement, make sure, have them repeat it back to you, their commitment to stay sober and not, create disruptive behavior. And, on demand, they would submit to a drug screen on demand, things like that. You want people to commit. They have to commit to chores and so on and so forth. And the rule assessment should be done, like I said, to ensure the effectiveness. A little bit more about rules. You want to establish a pattern of personal and financial responsibility. What does that mean? Well, if the rent is due Friday nights at 6 p.m., then I need to have my rent in Friday night by 6 p.m. Not Saturday, not Sunday, but Friday night. And what's that doing? The whole thing about recovery housing is about independent living and how to grow up, put on my big boy pants, and start participating in my life, my own life, being responsible and accountable. So what I'm learning, and I don't even realize when I'm early in recovery, how much I'm learning about, be responsible, pay my bills on time, follow the rules. Because in my drinking and drugging career, I didn't think the rules applied to me. I don't know if anybody can identify with that, but I just made my own rules as I went. I was kind of like the jungle rules, if you will. So you're creating a supportive peer environment. And reward systems for earning privileges, I would stay away from money. This is not about, giving money for being a good boy or a good girl. One example is if you have double and single rooms and you have a client resident that's been there for a long time, 18 months or so, and they're in a double room and they've been doing a great job. They're doing all their work. They're working their program. They're making their medical appointments. They're taking care of themselves. They're eating. They're sleeping good. Everything's going pretty good. Well, you've got a single room coming up in a month, and you'd like to offer it to that person. So that's kind of a reward. And you can be creative in your own way for things like that, for earning privileges. And you also want to develop a family atmosphere within the house. A lot of folks never had meals together. A lot of houses we know here, they do throw down some compensation for holiday meals, Christmas, Thanksgiving, so on, and there's other holidays too. And the manager and maybe a couple of the residents will go down to the local grocery store and load up on some good stuff and then bring it all back. And everybody is got a job in making the meal, whether it's the salad, the mashed potatoes, the roast beef, whatever. And everybody has something to do with that. And that's building community where everyone is part of, which a lot of us weren't before. We were just kind of running, flying by the seat of our pants, isolating. So you're developing a real team approach, a family atmosphere. And number one down the bottom there, well, the last one, the number one word here in this entire business is safety. The safety of your residents. That's number one. Okay, so let's look at some house rule minimums. On the left, regular attendance at 12-step, faith-based, or other recovery programs. And what do I mean by other recovery programs? Well, we at CCAR, we support multiple pathways of recovery. So you might want to introduce something into your structure, into your home structure about that. There's things like smart recovery. There's all types of stuff. There's, oh gosh, I forget the names. But anyway, that's under the guise of other recovery programs. A sponsor, a 12-step sponsor within a designated time frame. That's in the 12-step arena. A lot of folks that in the houses we deal with here, they like to see 30 days that their client have a sponsor. And, you know, there's usually a lot of help and a lot of networking within the house where folks help each other with that. Not being their sponsor, but kind of saying, you know, like, well, check out this meeting, and just kind of supporting each other, try to direct them in that sponsored direction. Again, weekly rent payments versus monthly. Full-time employment would be the land of perfect. Even your manager will be working. The sharing of yard and house chores. Attendance at regularly scheduled house meetings, that's very important. That's usually facilitated by the house manager with a brief agenda, which he or she may ask others in the house if they have anything that they would like to put on the agenda prior, you know, a couple days prior to the meeting. And again, it's about everyone is part of, you know, it gives me a sense of confidence. It builds my self-esteem, and I'm part of something that's really meaningful to me. And I love my house. And this is their home, and they will protect it to the nth degree. Curfew limitations on overnights or visits. We don't recommend having any outsiders sleeping over. Limitations on overnights or visits is if your clients at holiday have family or whatever, you can, you know, definitely let them go for a couple of days to visit their family. And then when they come back, you need to do what you have to do to make sure everything's running smoothly, i.e. maybe a drug screen. Drug screening, we don't want to push too hard because we like to say on demand. If you know there's a need for it, fine. Here's a great story I heard from a gentleman. He stands in front of the potential relapse person, and he stands in front of them with the drug screen cup like it's the Holy Grail. And he just remains silent. And the person just is so overwhelmed with feelings, they agree or not, 9 times out of 10, if they are using, they do agree that they're using. So he or she didn't even have to use the drug screen cuff. And at that intersection, you could say, what would you like to do? Would you like to go to treatment right now? We could shuttle you right now. A couple of us will jump in the car with you. We'll get you right to treatment. Some folks, if the person's too drunk, they have a sleep it off bed or couch in another room, and they let them sleep it off. And the next morning, they revisit the issue. So your probation period. If a lot of homes have a 90-day, we need you here for 90 days, and they have something called a recovery or sober deposit. If their upfront cost, for example, is $500, if I leave on good terms after 90 days, it's possible I'll get the $500 back. So you want to carve that into etch that into your contract agreement. A recovery deposit, 90 days. You don't have to do the 90-day thing, probation. Some folks do. Some of the houses do that. It kind of gives the person like a commitment that he's going to commit to the homeowner. The resident's going to commit to the homeowner for 90 days. So it gives them, 90 days. That's a long time in this world to be clean and sober and to get to the next hallway. Drug or alcohol screen on demand and notice of intent to vacate and removal of personal belongings. If someone is terminated by you or relapses and runs from your house, because if someone's getting drunk or high, they probably won't stick around in the house. That would be an absolute buzzkill for them. But how long do I have to hold on to Jimmy or Joanne's big plastic bag of personal belongings? I would say 2 weeks to 30 days. You don't want a garage or a basement full of stuff. And if it's stuff like clothing and shoes, you could, after that period, donate that to the metal box on the corner. But do have that in your agreement and make sure they repeat it back and they understand it, that if something happens and you're gone, we're going to remove your personal stuff to the metal box down the street. So let's prepare for the business. On your admissions form, you want to make sure you have an emergency contact information because you may need it someday, hopefully not. But and here's an adage. Some people have no people. They've had a rough life. God bless them. They don't have any mother or father, brother or sister, grandma, Auntie Edie, Uncle Frank, nothing. They are on their own. So that could be a notation on the contact form that they do not have any other persons in their life as far as an emergency contact. Most do, but you will run across a few that don't. House rules, the contract agreement. You want to talk about the rent payments again, the rules in the contract, and the amenities. You want to have a grievance policy. I don't like the way you park your car in my spot. Well, who said it's your spot? I don't like the way, this and that. Most of your grievances will go to the manager, and the owner won't hear of anything like that unless it's something really catastrophic, i.e. Relapse and possible overdose, accidental death, or heart attack, or something else. Or there's a fire in the home, large or small. Of course, the owner is going to hear about that. Have your discharge policy in place, too, when you need it. Okay, some more about preparing for business. On the left, you'll look at house manager. That's we talk about in the NARS 4 levels of support. This is number 2. The volunteer usually receives free rent and or a private room at a discount. That's between you, the owner, and your manager. Some kind of an agreement. Because they are running the house, they're going to be vested in doing a lot of stuff. Planning needs to be done to be sure the home continues to operate. The manager assists owner in maintaining safe recovery environment. Usually in recovery multiple years, the manager is. I hear a lot of folks say 3 to 5 years. There are also people who are retired with many, many years in recovery that may be looking for an opportunity like this to manage your home. So just kind of keep your ear to the ground or when you're networking. And the manager acts as a role model, of course, and mentor to the residents. The manager follows all house rules themselves, including maintaining full-time employment. On the right, we've all heard of Oxford House. They're a large agency, coast to coast, over 1,700 homes, I believe, right now. And the Oxford House model is a democratically run, self-run. If you want to look up Oxford House, you'll see at the bottom there they have oxfordhouse.org. We don't hear much from them. I guess they're in Connecticut. There's probably 20 of them or so. I know they're affiliated with NAR also, and I never get any calls. They are on our website, findrecoveryhousing.com, which is going to switch this summer. We're building a brand new website, recovery housing website, which currently is serving the United States, but will be this summer decreased to Connecticut homes only. The reason for that is because NAR right now has 20 states affiliated and working on 21. And eventually, if we get to that place where there's all 50 states, each state will have their own website list directory. So we don't need to be serving the United States any longer. Non-compliance and eviction, the icky stuff. So there's consequence for breaking the house rules. The residents learn responsibility for their own behavior. Again, I got to grow up. I got to follow the rules. If I don't, consequences are usually on a case-by-case basis, except for severe infractions that may result in immediate eviction. There's removal of reward or privileges, something less intense, or like maintaining the same chore until done adequately. Be creative. But continuous breaking of house rules and the person's just not changing that negative behavior, so to speak, that could result in eviction. And that's, the manager's going to have that initial contact. And there's going to be complaints from other residents too. A little bit about eviction. If I break promise to stay clean and sober, if I'm drinking and getting high, I'm probably going to leave on my own. The resident usually leaves on their own. Or it may require immediate eviction. Alcohol or drug use on or off premises, stealing, possession of weapons, creating disruptive behavior, physical or verbal hostility. Those are all deemed eviction. Homeowners often assist resident in getting treatment or alternative housing. I mentioned this earlier. If someone's using alcohol and or drugs, and if they're too into it to talk about it, let them sleep it off, talk about it in the morning, and say, Ken, do you want to go get help? You were very drunk last night, and do you want to go get help? Yes or no? If I say no, I'm out. Then the person has to leave. Can't have them there. It'll implode the morale rapidly. We've heard of difficult evictions, people changing locks, moving out furniture from the room. I don't know if that has to be that intense. It's your furniture. A homeowner should have a strategy in place to deal with difficult evictions. We heard of one in Connecticut a few years back. There was a gentleman who lost his job. He was drinking and didn't pay rent for 7 or 8 weeks. Now, the owner's trying to work with him because they want to help the person. But, the days just kind of went by. Now, what happens is the other residents in the house are getting a little perturbed because they're all pulling their weight. They're doing their work. They're going to their support system meetings. They're doing all the next right things. And here's a person that's not. So what you got is basically you have a squatter on the couch. So now the person says, I'm not leaving, make me, says to the manager. The manager talks to the owner. Owner comes over the house. They asked the person one more time. He said, no, I'm not leaving. Make me leave. So he forced their hand to call the police. The local police came, 2 officers came, and told the owner and the manager, if you touch this person's personal belongings, we will arrest you. Wow. So they waited for second shift. Those officers left. Second shift of the police department starts. They call them up, 8, 9 o'clock at night. Here comes a woman officer and a male officer, female, male officer. They look at the person. They look at the contract. They said, okay, did you sign this? The person said, yep. And they said, you got to leave. So now you have 2 different stories from the same police department. One supported the person leaving because he obviously said, I'm not leaving, make me. And then the other earlier 2 officers said, we'll arrest you if you touch this person's personal belongings. So what did that prompt? That prompted an opportunity for us to go speak with this town's police department, let them know a little bit about what's going on with recovery housing and how we can work together when this happens. Now, we know there's things like eviction process, and it's very difficult and very lengthy. But in this world of recovery housing, that's why your agreement is going to carry some weight. You have to have that agreement in place. And when the person moves in, make sure you talk about that piece. If you drink and or use drugs or weapons or disruptive behavior, whatever, they have to basically repeat it after you, back to you, and sign that contract. And that's really the only legal piece you've got if there comes a day where you have to remove somebody. Just like retail says, location, location, location. Where do I put my house? Not in the woods, not off a dirt road, probably. I mean, it would be nice, but it's really important. You want it, the house in a really good spot near support services, parole, prevention, social services, proximity to 12-step faith-based, again, and other programs. Lots of employment opportunities, maybe 1 or 2 bus lines, adequate parking for registered and insured vehicles. If you have a house off the street and there is no parking driveway, your clients will start to clump all their cars in front of the house on both sides of the street. It's a good neighbor policy to make them spread out so they're not taking all the spots in front of the house, things like that. And if you have an automobile in the driveway or in the street with no license plate, have the client take care of that as soon as possible, because City Hall will knock on your door and they'll ask what's going on with the vehicle with no plates. Okay. On your floor plan, the new residents usually move into a double room to avoid isolation. And a lot of folks won't put TVs in the rooms, the individual rooms, because that, again, might create some isolation. Your single rooms are available as resident continues in recovery. It was kind of like that caveat earlier where you can give them a single room. They've been doing great. You know, they would like to have their own room. So anyway, 2 to 3 floors to accommodate 10 to 12 residents, 3 or 4 single rooms, and 3 or 4 double rooms. You want to have a single room for your manager, that's for sure. Out here, we have a lot of differences in zoning. Every town, in Connecticut has different zoning. And what we're finding, it's kind of like a pattern. If it's a single home with 3 bedrooms, they have this clause in their big book down at City Hall. No more than 6 unrelated folks could live in this home. So it's been a struggle for some homeowners because they've got the capacity to put 8 and possibly 9, 10 beds, but their towns they're running into some roadblocks. So we're doing what we can do to figure it out and see if, as long as they're within the proper building codes and all that. We're trying to figure out why. There's nothing in any book that I've seen down at City Hall that mentions the word recovery house. What they use is a multifamily, single dwelling, boarding house. So they try to pigeonhole everybody into a boarding house, which you're not. You're a recovery house. Common areas. You want to have an adequate kitchen with plenty of, seating for everybody to have a dinner. Your living room would have a TV. Your kitchen has adequate refrigeration, 4-slice toaster oven, microwave. Excuse me, 4-slice toaster, not a toaster oven. It could be a fire hazard. Microwave, adequate stove, oven, things like that. Pretty basic. Sometimes you need a little more refrigeration. So once you start this process, let's make believe you won't have any renovation dollars available. You don't want to go out and buy new furniture. A lot of you are aware of things like hotel liquidation. Check those places out. Google those places in your area if you're looking for some pretty good furniture. And you can get vanities if you're redoing a bathroom. Everybody knows a carpenter in the family, electrician in the family, a plumber. That always comes in handy because it's pretty expensive to just fire it up, with folks that you don't know. You don't want to get stuck with huge bills. And if you didn't get your real estate yet, make sure you do your homework with your town or your city hall. Look at the zoning and building codes before, because you may have variances. They may ask you to put in a sprinkler system, which could be very, very expensive, or wheelchair ramps. We don't know what your town is doing in your state. So do a little homework. I don't recommend going down to town hall and saying, gee, we're thinking about opening a recovery house. What I would suggest is going on their website and surf around on the city hall's website around zoning, building codes, things of that nature, and you'll find it. And you might find a clause about, X amount of unrelated people able to live in this home. Okay, next. The timing of the purchase. Winter months provide the highest occupancy, so optimal time is just prior to the start of winter, because you need time to get ready to prepare your house. We get approximately 50 calls a week during the winter months, and it's sad to report that of the 50 calls a week, probably 70% have no money to move into a privately owned recovery home. And because a lot of it is Department of Corrections, and there are some programs, but there's not a lot. And we don't want to just tell people to go to the shelter, but that's what we have to do. We're gonna give them that information, that resource, that if they're, so it is a sad number, and it takes time to get work and get on your feet and to be able to afford $600-700 a month in rent, and then also to feed yourself, because most of the homes, they give a couple of meals, but they don't feed you. You're on your own. So next, some marketing strategies. You want everybody to know what you're doing so you could have some referrals to your home. So you want to develop some contacts. Make yourself a real inexpensive brochure and some business cards. Contact your nearby rehab facility, detox units, halfway houses, hospitals, church groups, state agencies that deal with people on parole, incarcerated, or homeless. You want everybody to know that you will have this recovery house in the community. And we know of folks on this end of town, they have they work with one or two treatment providers, and they get referrals from them. Word of mouth, tell everybody what you're doing. You could create your own website if you could do it inexpensively. And check to see if your state is a NAR affiliate, National Alliance for Recovery Residences. You can go on narronline.org. That's NAR, NARRonline.org. And you could see if your state is an affiliate, and then you can get a lot of pointers from them. And if they are, then once your house is ready, they probably already have a template website for listing recovery houses. Here's some of your friends, the federal regs. They're kind of like our friends, if you will. Americans with Disabilities Act and the Fair Housing Agreement. Those two are kind of in your corner. I'd like to add another one here, a capital HHS, Health and Human Services. Health and Human Services, HHS, has a really good article. The article is called People in Recovery Have Rights. People in Recovery Have Rights. Good article. Check it out. Anyone could pretty much open up a recovery house as long as they're in the proper zoning and they're abiding by fire code regulations, things of that nature, building codes. But what we run into, and I know you're all familiar with NIMBY, there's a lot of NIMBYism out there, and not in my backyard. And that's where we want to have, the chance to educate the public on what we're all trying to do here. And we know there's not a lot of forward thinking when it comes to recovery from the surrounding folks. There's a lot of fear about new houses coming into the neighborhood of this sort of recovery house. But we have rights. We have rights. And if you're up against any of that right now, my suggestion is to give NAR a call or call me and tell me what you're going through. And we can help you direct that call. Next bullet is avoiding discrimination issues. And with that, it ties into the last bullet. Whatever you're asking of one person in your house, your resident client, be sure you're asking the same questions across the board to all your clients. That's all we're saying. Be very careful. Don't have different questions for different people. Make it boilerplate, template, whatever you call it, the same questions. Okay, and you'll avoid any discrimination issues. So when you look in your zoning, again, you're going to see either single dwelling residence or multifamily or boarding. Accurate zoning determination should be done prior to purchase. I said that earlier. Don't, unless you already did, or some folks have estates willed to them. But if you haven't bought real estate yet, hold off until you do a little bit of homework here and check your town, your city hall, okay, on the building codes and the zoning regs and ordinances, because you may need a zoning variance to operate, okay? And we don't want you getting stuck now with a $40,000 bill when, to open your house, that's going to set you back. It's happened here. Sadly, and then the person's house was taken from 10 beds to 6 beds. So that's 4 beds. That's a lot of money in 12 months. But he's still operating. He's doing okay. He's actually opened a lady's house this year. Next. So check town ordinances and codes before you purchase. You can't avoid them. Does the house currently meet specs? Are any special restrictions or licenses required? Find out. Ask those questions. Health and safety, housing code specs, parking regs, any other rules that may limit the ability to operate. Do all of this first before you step into signing for a new home. So when you're signing up your legal status, what I see is a lot of people going with number 2, limited liability, LLC. You're not a corporation, and I don't think you want to go sole proprietorship because there would be a direct line. If something happened in the recovery house, your personal belongings are prey. So you don't want to go sole proprietorship. I would encourage you to look up limited liability on your favorite search engine, read up on it, and And again, you're not a corporation. There are, we've heard of a couple of nonprofit recovery homes. I'm not sure how that works. I'm sure they have to get their nonprofit application and then get status of a 501c3. And then I believe your 501c3 would need to have a board of directors. So it's kind of a different ball game. But if you're looking into that, check that out too. You may know somebody who's doing nonprofit recovery home. If you do, check with them. I mean, anybody in the business of recovery housing, if you know of them and you have questions, give them a call. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to help you out. You may want to think about hiring a professional to kind of look over your paperwork, if you will, the tax stuff, the financial statements, a lawyer who specializes in recovery home businesses. So that's just something to think about. Recovery houses, our owners are vulnerable to complaints. And again, I just said it, ask other homeowners for referrals to professionals also. So it's something to think about. Have them look over your stuff before you turn the key. Okay? We have a website we've had for 15 years or so. It's called findrecoveryhousing.com. Some of you have been on it for many years. And the website is going to be dedicated to Connecticut this summer. So you may have your own website, or your state may be an NAR affiliate already. Check that out, the National Alliance for Recovery Housing. And what we're going to have this summer when we shut down the national site is we're going to have many links, because we all want to we still want to work together. So we're going to have a lot of links to some of you. And because if somebody's out west in a treatment center and they want to go back to Midwest, East Coast, whatever, our hope is to have linkages where we could all cross over and give folks a broader website listing, if you will. So now is Q&A, I guess, is questions. I'm sure there's questions folks may have. If you have a question, type it in. I'll read the question so everybody can hear it, and I'll do my absolute best to answer it. If I cannot answer it, I'm going to need your email address so we can go get you an answer and get you some direction. So are there any questions? We could email you a hard copy of the presentation. Thanks, Al. Good question, Stephanie. Stephanie said, Ken, you mentioned sleeping off beds. Do you think recovery housing operators put themselves at any risk by not taking a resident who's relapsed to the hospital? That's a good question. It's a good question. So it's kind of a case by case. If I was the homeowner, I'd probably say, let's get a couple guys in the car if it's a male situation and get them over to the ER. That's what I would do. I've heard stories about sleeping it off. It was probably not so critical, but I don't know if I would take the chance, because I'm not a doctor, so I don't know how critical anybody, if they fall asleep, if something can happen. Jacqueline wants to know how we request a hard copy. Yeah, we're going to get that to you. Stacy's going to email that to you. Kimberly writes, how resistant are communities to having a recovery home in their neighborhood? It's case by case. It really is. And if you're up against the NIMBYs and they start coming down on you, here's one thing that we don't do. We don't parade up and down the neighborhood saying we're going to open a recovery house. However, there is a good neighbor policy. Once you're up and running, you could do all kinds of really cool things, your residents, facilitated by you and your manager, to maybe clean off somebody's steps if there's snow on them. Maybe it's Christmas Eve, you could bake a few cookies for the elderly woman down the street. You can become active in the community events. You can volunteer at the local soup kitchen as a group. There's a lot of ideas for the good neighbor policy. And when people start to see that in your community and on your street, they're going to have questions like, who are they? And next thing you know it, it's not a bad thing. It's pretty good. And that's what we're trying to do more of instead of being so underground. It's come out of the dark into the light. So, but there's still resistance because there's not a lot of forward thinking on this topic of recovery from what I call the normal people. And there's a lot of fear around, those drug addicts or those drunks. They're going to siphon all my gas. They're going to steal my kids. They're going to take my firewood. It's all that fear-based. So we could have a good time showing folks that's not what it is. And what if it was your son or daughter? What if it was a veteran that needed a recovery home? Would that change their thinking? I think so, a little bit. But we've got a lot of work to do, but it's good work. It's really good work.
Anne asked a question. How long would you recommend a resident to wait before they start to look for work?
Okay, Ann had a question. How long would you recommend a resident to wait before they start to look for work? Well, if they're coming out of a 28-day, 30-day, 21-day treatment, and they're moving into your house, so they're 30 days now, and they need the work for the money to pay the rent, I would get them busy ASAP, because they're going to be working at night. What I mean there is they're going to be going to their meetings, their support group meetings in the evening. And a lot of folks I work with, including myself, it was really good for me to get busy right away. And each day, I mean, you go through feelings early in recovery because it's so new. Being sober and clean is such a new thing. It's uncharted territory for a lot of us. So we have a lot of feelings in the beginning, and it could be a year or two. But I think my humble opinion is get busy right away. Get busy right away. Now, there's jobs that I wouldn't be a bartender. I wouldn't put myself in any kind of that. And we've had guys tell me they're early in recovery that they got a job as a bartender. I go, why would you do that? Oh, I'm all right. I won't drink. Well, they're no longer around, so I'll just mind my own business on that one. But if it's good work and it's not jeopardizing their recovery, because somebody's grandma said, an idle mind is the devil's playground. If I have too much time on my hands, especially in early recovery, it's probably not a good place for me. So I want to stay busy, healthy busy. Working is good, again, depending on what the job is, but I want to stay busy. Then when I get home, I can clean up, have dinner, and group up with my other folks, because that's what this is all about. It's no longer a me thing, it's a we thing, recovery. I'm building a recovery capital, friends, work, a system where I got meetings. I'm going to go camping. I'm going to go to a recovery event. So you're building recovery capital for yourself and within the house. And the more we can do, and then people start feeling the gratitude, and life is going okay, and okay is good. So, Kimberly, I hope that answered your question.
Jean asked what's the average length?
Jean says, what is your average length of stay for residents? Good question, Jean. This is what we're hearing. From 18 months to 3 years. I've met gentlemen in homes for 10, 12 years. They are the home manager. They have no other family or friends. They're single, and it works for them, and they love it. You will get people from all walks of life. So you never know. You never know how you're helping somebody. So, yeah, the average length of what we're seeing is 18 months to 3 years. And I think if you look at data, if you want, that's about par for the course. It took me 3 years in recovery to think about finishing my degree in marketing, and then I went back to college and I finished. But I was too fragile probably before that. I just wasn't ready. So I needed every day of that time to really work on myself and get myself a good footing and a good foundation of recovery. Okay, Al's typing. Let's give him a second. Do I know of a good study, Al writes, that shows the benefits of recovery houses? A good study? No, but I could point you to a good website that talks about benefits, and that's NAR, National Alliance for Recovery Residences, and that's lowercase NARR online.org. And you could look at you could look at the history, some of the things that NAR has done for recovery housing. We know that there's no state or federal oversight of recovery housing in Connecticut, and I can't speak for other states, but there's a lot of states in the nation that do not have any state or federal oversight of recovery housing. Now, we want safe, affordable recovery housing for our clients. And I believe you all want that. That supports your clients' recovery core values. I believe you want that too for your clients. Okay. Okay, so Stephanie said, Al, take a look at, yeah, actually, Ohio Recovery Housing. Thanks, Steph. I've been looking at you guys too, and it's a good website. There you go. Stephanie says they have links to peer-reviewed articles. So, Al, you could look at ohiorecoveryhousing.org articles. You could go on, when you go on NAR, you see all the affiliates, and you'll see the 19, 20 states on there, and you can click on their links and see what everybody's doing. Florida, Georgia, soon to be CCAR, but we're not a homeowner. We're a recovery advocacy agency. We started this business about 15 years ago. We were actually the co-founder of NAR. We designed a thing called minimum standards, and NAR took a look at that and asked if they could borrow that, and we said absolutely. Okay, let's see. Kimberly, will these homes be regulated by state fed in the future? Don't know. We don't know. I think it's best if you can become an affiliate and we get all 50 states hooked up with NAR. We might have some credibility and some clout when it comes time to show up at the legislative office meetings. Maria says we're opening 8 to 10 women bed for women home in a few months. Where is that, Maria? And Jean's asking, does your group have any experience with recovery homes for women with young children? Jean, we do not. We've heard of providers out there in Connecticut. like Connecticut Renaissance and I think MCCA. I'm not sure. Are you Connecticut? But anyway, we do not work with that. We work strictly with privately owned recovery homes for um, male or female 18 years and older. Okay, Maria is typing. Just a second. Maria says, we will be a nonprofit. We are getting grants from the state. We will be staffed 24/7. Our thought is to have the overnight staff be a woman that will have 18 months clean and will have recently graduated from another home. Do you feel that is enough time and experience? Oh, anybody want to chime in on that one? Maria says she's going to be a nonprofit. Kimberly said no. Maria. Kim says no. 18 months clean? No. Ann says no. Also, 2 to 3 years minimum. When I host the face-to-face training here in Connecticut for how to, so you want to open a recovery house, in the conversations we have amongst the group, they go 3 to 5 years. They're looking for 3 to 5 years minimum long-term recovery. Maria, thank you for saying okay. Kimberly says 18 months is not long enough. Thank you, Kimberly. I think Marie got her answer. Thanks everybody on that one. These are good questions, folks. There's no silly questions. Stephanie says, is there fair housing legal aid in Connecticut? Have you tried working with them to assist operators who have zoning issues? Thank you. I will look into that. Thank you, Stephanie. Maria says, she is to be our safe person overnight, but not our day-to-day operations. Thank you, Marie. Good questions. Thank you. Yeah, getting back to what Stephanie was saying about fair housing legal aid, we worked with a lawyer here in the state that specializes in recovery housing, and NAR has a team also, but we had a case in Bristol, Connecticut. It didn't get too far, and the owner decided not to push it because it was going to cost them an arm and a leg. But legal aid is a whole nother avenue. So again, Stephanie, thank you. We will look into that. And okay, Maria says, okay, okay, yeah, Stephanie's typing again. Okay, and Kim. Stephanie writes, they have been helpful in requesting a reasonable accommodations from our city offices to have more residents living in the houses. That's exactly what we want, Stephanie. Beyond the, and Stephanie writes on to say beyond the unrelated persons limit. That's exactly what we need here because we're getting pushed down. And these houses that some of them that we're dealing with, they have the capacity. They're huge homes. They have the capacity for 10 to 12 people, no problem. But it's those little underwritings at the town. So thanks for that. I'll be following up on that tomorrow. Kim said, what types of liabilities will we face as homeowners? Who wants to answer that? What type of liabilities will we face as homeowners? Kim writes on to say, I mean, it's a high risk group. I'm still waiting for an answer from anybody about what type of liability. But Ann's got a question. Besides 3 to 5 years of sobriety for the house manager, what type of training should they have, if any? Oh, they could have all types of training. They could have recovery coach training. They could have ethical standards, motivational interview. They could have a Narcan training from their state. You might want to have Narcan in your home with this pandemic of opioids and heroin. Oh, Kim just made a recommendation to CCAR coach training. That's the recovery coach training. Thank you. And Stephanie made one that I was thinking of, but I was waiting for somebody to answer it. You will definitely want to have property insurance. Stephanie is 125% correct. You got to have property insurance. Ann says some other trainings are CPR and blood-borne pathogens. Yeah, the trainings are endless, folks. That's good for your manager. Endless. But when in doubt and something's going on in the house, what do? You dial 911. We know that. Everybody knows that. If you're not sure, it looks like an emergency, don't hesitate to dial 911. Okay, Kim's typing again. Kim's still typing. Some good questions here, folks. No silly questions. Kim writes, I understand that insurance is necessary, but should something happen in the house amongst the tenants, then what? I'm going to read that again. I understand that insurance is necessary, but should something happen in the house amongst the tenants, then what? Who's liable, Kim says. Who's got an answer for that one? Anybody? I understand that insurance is necessary, but should something happen in the house amongst the tenants, then what? Who's liable? Let's say a fight breaks out. That's when I would dial 911. Don't get in the middle of the fight. Tell them you're calling the police. No, really. Because don't put anybody in between two people that are fighting. Bad, bad, bad. Ian writes, the homeowner have certificate of liability insurance for various injuries and or property damage. Thank you, Ann. The homeowner has a certificate of liability insurance for various injuries and or property damage. Kim says, thank you, Ann. All around, a lot of insurance here. So when you're ready to open that house, before you do, of course, you got to have insurance. So you got to talk to somebody who specializes in recovery home. They'll probably send someone out from the company and do a walkthrough and have a questionnaire and negotiate pricing for your insurance. I don't know if it's negotiable. It could be pricey, but you got to have it. Ann writes, would insurance cover those working community service? I don't know. I'll repeat that. Ann's question, would insurance cover those working community service? I'm not quite sure what you mean. Are they a resident of your home? If they're living in your home, right? I think that's what you're saying. So I'll wait. Ann says yes. Yeah, I don't know if community service changes anything, Ann. Al writes, would you avoid residents sent from drug court? That's totally up to you. Have that phone call, the initial phone call with the client, you and your manager or your manager. If that goes okay,
There you go.
okay, I'm back on. I guess I had a microphone. So I don't know how far you heard. I was talking about drug court. We don't want to say no to anybody. Check them out, do the interview. If it works on the phone, invite them in, have them talk about their recovery. You'll know in a few minutes if this person's serious about their recovery. You don't have to let people in just because you got to fill a bed. You can be a little, just stick to your policy. Ann says, we have drug court here. They have to really qualify with strict screening by the judge and probation officers. We accept them in our area. Thank you, Ann. And Ann says we lost sound. So I'm back on? Okay. I think I'm back on. I see the microphone's on.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Is that it, folks? If that's it, if you could hear me, thank you very much. Okay, we have a couple typers. Kim says thank you. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Stephanie. Kim, thank you for that comment. I'm glad it was informative. If you got some takeaways from this, I'm very happy about that. Call me or email me. I'm accessible with any questions because we're all learning together as we grow. I don't claim to be the subject matter expert, and I don't know everything. I learned something today on this every time I do this webinar. And Al, thank you. Al says, thanks for a great presentation. Thank you very much, Al. Thank you, Ann. Ann's going for a recovery house interview. Good luck. And thank you, Glenn. Thank you very much, too. And thank you, Stacy. Okay, everybody, good luck. For those of you who are going to have some St. Patty's corned beef tonight, please skip the green beer, okay? You really don't need the green beer. Okay, I'm going to skip the green beer. I never liked it when I was drinking anyway. It just didn't look right. So thank you, and happy St. Patrick's Day. And have a wonderful spring. We're in for a nor'easter here, one more snowstorm. Ann Tyson, 28 years sober, Glenn and I. Excellent. Congratulations. Excellent. Thank you, Stephanie. Stephanie says congratulations. Stacy says congratulations. Ann says thanks. Good job.